Hi everyone, this is my presentation for my practical case. I was given a case with a problem which I have titled Turning Students into Global Citizens Through Project-Based Learning with a Holistic Perspective in ELT. Well, let me get started. For this presentation, I will focus on three steps, which is the introduction of the case, the problem and the resolution of the case, and some final considerations. Well, first things first, the introduction. First of all, I'd like to tell you about the person with the issue, which is a teacher by the name of Andrea. She is a middle school teacher and she has years of experience working in this area. We also know about her that she has various certifications which prove that she's actually a C1 on the European framework, which means she is an expert on the language. English is not an issue to her. We also know that she has gained experience over the years of her work, but not only because she has experience by doing it, but actually because she has also been reinforced with theory. She has actually prepared herself. She has learned different theories, different approaches, which have led her classroom to be active. The students are participative most of the time. And one of the things that also stands out is that there's a lot of communication in the classroom. So these things are crucial for Andrea. At this point, we can understand that she has been successful in her classes as far as English level and student interaction wise. As for the language practice, Andrea, she has been focused on a textbook she was given, uh, which is a grammatical textbook, and she has been following this textbook to give her classes. Nevertheless, throughout her experience, she learned that she cannot just follow the book, but she must do things that are relevant to the students. So we also know that she has brought material so the students can have hands-on experiences. She has also had the discussion groups so that the students can communicate and share ideas. And she has also had role play. She encourages students to practice the language by following a script. So we know that she goes beyond the book in order to achieve her goal, which is, of course, that the students are familiar and use the English language. Well, now that we know more about Andrea, which is our teacher, I would like to tell you what the institution is asking from Andrea or from the staff. The institution is asking the teachers to change their focus. They want them to have a holistic perspective in their classes. But not only that, they believe that in order for the classes to have a holistic perspective, they need to follow a project-based learning approach, and of course also to have classroom tasks or classroom jobs. And they believe that by combining these two elements, they will have successfully achieved the holistic perspective, which in turn they expect to have the students develop values throughout these projects. They expect them to develop skills and knowledge of technology tools. And with this combination, they expect the students to be able to become global citizens, which is an important goal for the institution. Well, we also know that the institution, in order to achieve these goals, has invested money. They have prepared labs, they have bought computers, smartphones, and of course, they have also acquired Wi-Fi for the school. They want these tools and areas to be well used and beneficial for the students. So let's get to the problem. What is the problem in this case? And eventually we'll talk about the resolution. The problem here is that, well, first of all, Andrea is being asked to work in a project-based learning, which she likes. She feels that this is going to be a great opportunity to develop skills on the students, to work on core values, to make them better, not just in the English language, but also as people, which is good. But she also has these other challenges, which are the problems. She's having troubles on planning her classes with a project-based learning method. She is also having troubles finding out how to implement technology into the classroom. And another thing that she's concerned about is how will she evaluate project-based learning? So these are the big questions. These are her issues. So briefly, I will describe a way that these problems could be resolved, and eventually I will give further details into the process. So first of all, lesson plans. Well, for the lesson plans, so far she has been using a textbook which is focused on grammar. Now, the fact that she's moving on to a project-based learning will make her planning much useful, because instead of working on a textbook and following topics week to week, now she can focus on a final goal, on an ultimate goal for a whole semester or even for a whole school year. And let's say in this case, if she focuses on a whole semester, she can dosify her lesson plans so that she could have, or she could still use a textbook, but to complement what she's seeing in class during the project. So, in order to work on this, on the project-based learning, she's going to have, as mentioned before, to dosify the project. She will have to start at the beginning of the semester and end at the end of the semester. And in between, she needs to have goals. So she's not going to focus on just what is the outcome, but rather the process in order to achieve that outcome. All right? So this is what Andrea needs to keep in mind for her lesson plans. That she can dosify the work, she can dosify the progress and divide it by weeks or every 2 weeks or even daily dosages. It'll be up to her, but she will evaluate progress more than anything else. As for the implementation of technology tools within the classroom, well, there are many uses for it, but the fact that the school is providing computers, phones, Wi-Fi, and even labs opens a great opportunity for the students. So she's going to use these tools mostly for research in order to work on the project, but she will also use platforms. Some of these platforms could be used to work in teams so they can collaborate as they develop their project. She can show videos as well that will be relevant to the content of the project. So all of these tools are going to be useful for her. And well, nowadays there are plenty of possibilities to implement these tools for, but she can focus on her project. So pretty much acquiring information, researching information, and then having the students use this information to develop a project. And as for the evaluation, well, as mentioned before, she's going to have a process. She's not going to focus just on the final outcome, but she's going to have her goals, her targets, as she wishes to dosify them by day, by every 3 days, by weekly goals, by any way she wants, she could do it. And of course, as long as the institution supports her proposals. Okay? But as for the project, she's going to have to focus on a rubric. So what I am proposing is that she follows a rubric, and the students, will have a clear idea of what is expected of them on the development of the project, and this will be the best way to evaluate in a very objective form and clear. Okay, so before I start talking about the process of the project that Andrea will implement, I would like to tell you the theoretical base for this project. Personally, I had a similar experience when I started being a teacher. I was actually asked for something similar, and I was very happy to learn recently about this throughout my research for this practical case. I discovered, this information, which I was very happy because it's something that if I would have known back then, it would have made my job a lot easier. I had to learn through experience. So this is a quote that I really loved from the person I will tell you about in a moment. And it says acquisition requires meaningful interaction in the target language. Natural communication, in which speakers are concerned, this is important, not with the form of their utterances, but with the messages they are conveying and understanding. This is Stephen Krashen, and I love this focus. It's more about producing than focusing on correctness. Eventually, that comes into the play part. So let me explain. This is the second language acquisition theory by Stephen Krashen. And for this theory, he focuses on 5 aspects, which he calls them, most of them are called hypotheses, but he has been through the process of developing them. So the acquisition learning distinction is the first one. Then we have the natural order hypothesis. We have the monitor hypothesis. We have the input hypothesis. And finally, the affective filter hypothesis. Let me explain one by one briefly. The acquisition learning distinction pretty much says that acquisition is subconscious. It's the way a native speaker learns the language. So through experience, through people telling them what the names of objects without explaining the reason, it's acquisition. So this is the way a native speaker learns a language, in this case, what we're talking about, English. And learning is actually a formal instruction. So this is where the teacher supports with structure the language. The natural order hypothesis, it states that acquisition of grammatical structures follows a natural order, which is predictable. So once again, focusing on native speakers. Kids start speaking in a way, and it was actually proved not only by Krashen, but by other teachers of language, that in many different languages, there is a natural order of acquisition by native speakers. And when a person from a different language, comes into contact with a native speaker or an area in which the language is different and they're trying to acquire this language, their acquisition also follows a similar order, although not exact, but it is predictable. This is the average order of acquisition in general terms of grammatical morphemes for English as a second language. I would just show them to you very quickly. And personally, I have seen this. Students, when they start, or whoever, when they start learning a language, they play with the words, and sometimes they make up the words, and they give certain terms, or in this case, some morphemes, and they may combine them wrong, but they still use them, because that's the way they feel it will be correct. So if we follow an order on the way that people learn, then we could have a higher rate of success in language acquisition. Then we have the monitor hypothesis. This one is focused on 2 areas also. Acquisition, which is the utterance, people speaking, whether if it's right or wrong, you're speaking and you're conveying a message, which might not be grammatically correct or correctly structured, but you understand, okay? And then we have the learning part, which is where the monitor starts taking into place. So as a person or as the learner starts using the language, monitoring means that you start correcting the use or the usage of the language. For a monitor, you have to focus on 3 things that are essential in order to monitor correctly. Whether you as a teacher are monitoring the students, or even the students can monitor themselves. And we can see this because if you try to have a conversation with a person that is learning the language, they will make many mistakes as they hold the conversation. As the conversation carries out, they will be making constant mistakes. That's because of these 3 factors. One, they may not have the time to think about it, to form the idea in their head, and it just comes out. But if you have the time, you can structure it. Focus on form. Of course, for this, the learner needs to have some knowledge of the language in order for them to start structuring correctly as well. And finally, know the rule. If the learner knows grammatical rules, then they will also start arranging their sentences before they say them out loud, and therefore start using the correct usage of the language. This is more visible in a test or when the students have to write, which gives them more time to think about what they're going to write compared to when they're speaking. Of course, as they develop their skills and as they practice, then the speaking becomes natural, and they don't have to think about it too much. It just comes out. The input hypothesis, this is only acquisition, and it's comprehensible input. And I meaning level plus one. This means that as a teacher, you are to provide opportunity for the students to learn and monitor their progress. And once the student has mastered, um, let's say, a level, what you were expecting for them to master, then you need to move on to the next step and give them something a little bit more difficult, and then work with them so that they can master it as well. And then you keep moving on. Sometimes we try to impose the time period or the time frame for a person to learn, and this doesn't always work for the students. So we focus on a level one. We make sure the students master that, which means they can level up and move on to level two. This is the input hypothesis. So the more input we provide to the students, of course, without overwhelming them, they will be taking steps forward to achieve the following level. Then we have the affective filter hypothesis. This is focused on motivation, self-confidence, and it's anxiety-free. So in order to achieve this, the learners have to feel motivated. They have to feel comfortable when they speak. One of the challenges I have seen in students when they start learning a language is that they feel embarrassed to speak because they're afraid other people will make fun of them. So as teachers, if we understand that the students have different emotions, they sometimes they're happy, sometimes they're angry, sometimes they had a difficult day, sometimes they're not in the mood, and sometimes they just want to talk. So with this in mind, we can have our students feel secure. They can start feeling that we understand them, and this will prepare them and give them a bigger opportunity to participate and learn. Another thing is that to achieve this, we need to let our students know that it's okay to make mistakes. Sometimes they are afraid of saying or speaking or writing or participating because they feel that what they're going to say is going to be wrong, either by the content or the pronunciation or whatever it is. So if we teach our students that it's okay to make mistakes, once again, we're gonna have them feel more confident about their participation, and that's what we want. Because if we can achieve this, we can have students feeling comfortable with themselves, more participative, and therefore more productive in the language. All right, so let's keep in mind that Andrea has had successful classes. Her students are participating in her classes all of the time. That she has had a successful rate in her communicative approach. The students are talking with her and amongst themselves. So far, we know that Andrea has been doing a good job in her teaching. Now, the question will be, how will she adapt to the project-based learning? So one of the things that I would like to state are the skills that are needed and or developed in PBL, project-based learning. And these skills are interpersonal skills. So if the students start working on project-based learning, they might not necessarily have the skills when they start, but they will develop them over time. If they have these skills, it'll make their progress a lot faster. So we have consensual decision making, which involves, of course, group discussion, empathy, listening to each other, dialogue and decisions, which once again goes hand by hand with the interpersonal skills. Team maintenance, this is important because the students learn that every member is important and everybody can have a role. Conflict management, which is, from my perspective, something very valuable, that the students learn to solve their conflicts, and team leadership. So these skills are going to be developed throughout project-based learning. And if we reflect back on what the school or the institution is asking for, PBL will perfectly develop skills in students for them to become aware of their environment, aware of each other, patient, comprehensive. So we will have a holistic perspective throughout PBL if we implement it correctly. So it involves teamwork, as mentioned before, collaboration, but in this case, we're also going to use technology as part of PBL. So let's talk about the project. What is it that I am proposing Andrea does? Well, I am proposing that she focuses on an eco-friendly environment for the institution. This is something that the students could relate to. They're middle school students. They could feel that what they're going to be working on could have a direct impact in their school, which could become more meaningful to them. And throughout the project, because we're focusing on eco-friendly environment, and if the process is followed correctly, the students will develop values. They will understand that we have to take care of the world, and that's not only, it doesn't mean just taking care of the environment, but the environment takes care of people. We can live healthy lives, so therefore values will be core throughout this project. And of course, with this, we are also ensuring that we are or that we have a holistic perspective in our project. Another thing that we must keep in mind is that project-based learning is not expected to happen in a couple of days. I mean, it could be in a week or 2 weeks, but in this case, the institution wants it to be throughout the course. So this is going to be, in this case, a project that is expected to be completed in a whole semester. So the teacher needs to start by explaining to the students what is an eco-friendly environment. This is important. The students, some of them may feel related, some of them may not. So she will start by eliciting from the students what they know about it, contributing. She will provide information, and maybe the students then can start looking into what the school is doing, whether the school has an eco-friendly environment, what they are implementing at the moment, so that they can have a clear idea of what their institution is doing right now, and they can build from there. Another important thing, because we should not forget that this is not a science class, but rather an English class, the teacher is going to focus a lot on developing the language. So one of the things that I am proposing is that from day one, the teacher provides vocabulary words related to the topic, and that she asks for a homework throughout the semester in which the students will build their own thesaurus. What I'm suggesting is that she provides a booklet for the students from day one, provides them some words so that the students can have a starter, and then request a weekly homework for them to add words throughout the semester. So by the end of the semester, they can have a thesaurus of their own. I believe the words should not be imposed on them. The teacher should not provide them weekly, but rather remind them to keep adding words. And these should be words of the students' own interest that they feel they could use for this project eventually. So it'll be an easy homework, but we can ensure that they are developing language. Then the teacher will provide a big question in order to get the students started with the project. The question will be, how do eco-friendly environments benefit the community? These questions will trigger the students to start thinking about how this could be possible. They will start thinking about recycling or reusing or reforestation. They will have their own ideas of how this could be beneficial to the community, which will trigger the second part, which is important for the teacher, for them to start doing research, for them to start looking into the community. They may discuss not only research online of what's going on in the world, but within their community. They can share ideas of what they see happening and ideas of what they think could be different, that could benefit their own city or neighborhood. Another thing that I suggest the teacher does is that as the students are acquiring information about eco-friendly environments, to invite experts. Contact people, that speak English, of course, but that are familiar with the topic so they can come and give talks to the students. This will let the students know that the project they're going to be working on is not just academically important, but rather that it has an impact and there's a whole professional field focused on this topic. So this will give a strong input to the students that what they're doing, it matters. It matters. Another thing that I suggest is that the teacher plans on a field trip. As the students are moving on week by week, acquiring more information about eco-friendly environments, working on some grammatical structures along the way, they will start developing the language. And having a field trip will help them to have a better experience of what it could be. So they can have a field trip to maybe a company, an industry that has a strong eco-friendly environment. Of course, this will require teacher Andrea to do some research prior to this, to find a place, to call, to ask them for permission to give them a tour, maybe a park somewhere. So the students can be really, really interested in developing this project. Now, we're not talking about doing the project yet. All of this is the process or building up the momentum for the students to develop the project. All right, so once this is done, the students will have a better idea of what is expected of them. They have a better idea of what they want to do, of how an eco-friendly environment works and benefits the people. At this point, the teacher will provide an outline, a research outline, a digital document that the students can start filling out. So it is not expected that the students do everything on their own. Just do some research and let me know your responses. No. The teacher needs to provide an outline so that the students can answer questions, complete information, add images, etc. And that way the students will know exactly what to follow, and then they will start working on this. This research will be the preparation for the project. So as the students work on this, the teacher, once again, is focusing on the progress. By now, she has covered several targets along the way, and she's not necessarily focused on the outcome of the project yet, but she's just working on the progress, preparing them for what's coming up. So let me go back a little bit. I'm sorry. I pressed 1 too many times. Okay, here we go. So as the students work on this outline, the teacher at some point, maybe towards the end, as they're wrapping up their project, according to the deadline of the teacher, she will have the students discuss among themselves this information. It's not about everybody having different ideas and not sharing them, but on the contrary, she still wants to use her communicative approach. She wants them to talk, to share what they found, to even to edit their work. Maybe they share some ideas and some students find out they were on the wrong track. So this will give them the opportunity to correct themselves. They will have a better idea of the project. And also, this is a great opportunity to focus on formative assessment, because the students themselves, the teacher can encourage them to focus on grammar, on grammatical structure, just among themselves. At this point, we have peer-on-peer assessment. The next step will be the teacher. The teacher will look into their projects. It is important that she proofreads the student's work, but does not correct it, only to proofread it. The idea is to have the students become aware of their mistakes, to have them process the reason they may be wrong and correct it themselves. This will give a great opportunity for the students to learn from their mistakes, to correct them, and this also provides an opportunity for the students not to make the same mistakes over and over. So if the teacher does this process and then she evaluates the student's outline, they will have a bigger rate of success. They will feel confident with their work. The teacher will achieve her goal, which is not necessarily to give them a grade immediately, but rather to follow the process of the students experiencing, practicing, trying out, correcting themselves, and eventually being evaluated. Okay, at this point, the students will be ready. Once they're done with the outline, they will be ready to start with their project presentation. So what I'm suggesting is that the teacher, now that the students know uh, the purpose, which is to have an eco-friendly institution or implement, if the school's already doing some things, to do something different, or what else could be implemented. So that will be the first part of the project. I recommend the teacher uses a platform. In this case, I am suggesting Google Slides because they could work simultaneously from different devices, different times, and the students can work on this document in teams. But the benefit is also that the teacher can have access to this document anytime and look at the progress of the students, and also she can start looking into the way they are structuring their sentences, which will be helpful. She will also provide a rubric so that the students know exactly what is expected of them at the end of this project. And then the students will get on task. They will start working on their project. They will start uh, looking into the rubric and start complying what they're being asked for. Throughout the project, it is very important for the teacher to monitor the work of the students, to go around and not wait until the project is done in order to see what they're doing. And once again, this is not evaluation, this is assessment. The teacher is supporting the students, correcting them, sharing ideas, and all of this will reinforce the students' work throughout the project in order for them to achieve a better outcome. So they work on this presentation for a while, and then we get to the assessment and evaluation. How will this work? Well, the teacher should focus on this progress. And once again, I am stating this in a general form, but the teacher could divide this maybe by weeks or by days. It's up to her. The first thing I recommend is once the students have a presentation, they present to other teams in order to have peer-on-peer assessment. They can ask questions, they can give ideas, they can also correct mistakes if they see them. So this will help the students take their work, re-edit it if necessary, in order to move on to the step 2, which is to present to the teacher. Once they present to the teacher here is not yet to evaluate the rubric, but rather to do the same thing that the students did, provide assessment. Listen to them, ask questions, provide feedback, and of course, at this point, the teacher could be more specific into the grammatical structure in order for the students to correct themselves. Then they will move on to the next step, which in this case, I recommend the teacher invites experts on the topic, either co-workers that are working with science maybe, or maybe someone from the industry they met on the field trip. This will be up to the teacher. But providing people that the students feel that their project is important to, and they will feel that, and they will feel encouraged by what they have done. The purpose of this is to have the experts listen to them, make them feel good about the work they have done. And at this point, because the students already went through a peer-on-peer assessment, a teacher-student assessment, the teacher can now evaluate the rubric and give them a grade. Okay. So now the students have wrapped up their project, they're finished with it, but I am recommending a final stage, which would be the most exciting for the students. That their projects, based on the students' willingness, of course, they present their uh, projects or their proposals to the principal of the school. This with the purpose of the principal actually implementing what the students are proposing in the institution. Now, all of this has a purpose. We're following a process in which we'll help the students acquire the language in a natural way, structure themselves. The exposure to experiences will also support the students' learning. And the fact that they propose it at the end to the principal will help the teacher in the following way. So these are the final considerations. The fact that the principal listens to the students' proposals will prove to the principal of the institution that project-based learning was successfully implemented, that a holistic perspective was achieved throughout this process, since the students in their presentation will be showing values, they will be showing computer skills, computer knowledge. They're going to show that they work together. which will be something that the principal could appreciate. Another thing is that since they will be working on this in English, then the usage of the language will be very clear to the principal as well, and he or she will know that the teacher has done or has acquired progress with the students. And finally, all of this will show the principal that the teacher did her best on focusing on the institutional expectations, and the schools are actually becoming global citizens. So, with all of this, I believe that if Andrea follows Krashen's second language acquisition theory and implements the project-based learning along with the skills she has developed over the years, she is meant for success. She will have a success rate with her students. And of course, as she gains more experience, just as she has done before, she will become even better at implementing what the school expects from her. So that is all for my presentation. Thank you very much.